Okay, in this video we're going to be comparing fractions. So this is pretty much what we need to know before we actually learn things like ratios and what's the best choice between two products based on the value and all those kind of things related to financial calculations. So what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to compare fractions. So suppose someone asked us which one of these fractions is larger, 7 on 12 or 8 on 15. Now, for small fractions, you can sometimes kind of just guess which one is going to be larger, basically by comparing how close the numerator is to the denominator in each case. But there are certain cases like this one in which it's not really that obvious, so there's got to be a more systematic method that we can use in order to determine that mathematically. And in fact there is. So the method that we need to use is convert, first of all, find the lowest common multiple of these two denominators, so of 12 and 15. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, so let's decompose 12 and 15 into their prime factors. So in this case, 12 decomposes into 2 and 6, and then 6 itself decomposes into 2 and 3. So basically this is going to be the product of 2 times 2 times 3. For 15, we have two prime factors, so this is going to be 3 and 5, and basically that's pretty much it. We cannot really simplify this any further. So now what we're going to do is we're going to write the least common multiple as basically the multiplication or the product of all these numbers, all these factors, such that they do not appear more than twice. So for example, if we have a 3 here and a 3 there, we only need to include a 3 once in the multiplication. But here we have 2, 2, so that means that we need to write 2 times 2, then times 3. The 3 is common between the two, so we only include it once, and then the 5 is not common, so we write it here. So we have 4 times 3, that's 12, times 5, that's 60. So the least common multiple in this case between those two denominators is going to be 60. So let's see what we can do now. So we gotta, to make 12 60, we gotta multiply it by 5. So if we multiply this by 5, we're gonna have on the top 35 on 60. And then for this one, to make it 60, we multiply it by 4. So that's gonna be 8 times 4, that's 32 on 60. So clearly this fraction is larger than that one, so we can conclude that 7 on 12 is larger than 8 on 15. So the idea is to always find the lowest common multiple between the two denominators, and then we just basically raise those numbers so that they have the same denominator, and then at that point we can actually compare the numerators to see which one is the larger fraction. And now we're going to do some examples with this to get you more comfortable with the process. So let's start with question A. We're comparing 3 on 4 and 5 on 6. So we're going to find the LCM of 4 and 6. So let's see, 4 decomposes into 2 and 2. For 6 we have, well, we're just going to write it here. Those are the two factors. Now one of the twos is repeated, so we only included one. So we have this 2 here times this 2, which is repeated, and then times 3. So that's going to be 4 times 3, that's 12. So that's the least common multiple between those two numbers. And now what we need to look at is, okay, so what number do we need to multiply this fraction by so that the denominator becomes 12? That's going to be 3. So for the first one, we're going to have 9 on 12. For the second one, to make this 12, we need to multiply both by 2. So that's going to be 10 on 12. So that means this one is clearly larger. So we're going to write 5 on 6 is actually going to be larger than 3 on 4. I should have probably written the other way around because this might confuse you a little bit. So let me just do it that way. So this one is the 3 on 4 fraction, and then this one is the 5 on 6. So 5 on 6 is the larger one. Okay, so that's pretty much that one done. Let's do question B. So answer is 5 on 6. Question B, let's find the least common multiple. 20 and 5. So let's see what are the prime factors of each. This one is going to be 2 and 10. And then 10 is going to be 2 and 5. So we're going to have the following. Let me just make some room. 2 times 2 times 5. Then 5 is a prime number itself, so its only factor is 5. So the 5 is repeated, so we only write it once. So actually, the least common multiple of these two numbers is going to be 20. And we know that because 5 is actually a factor of 20. Or 20 is indeed a multiple of 5. So that's to be expected between the two. So in this case, if we look at these two numbers, this one we just leave the same, so we don't do anything to it. But to make this one 20, we just multiply both by 4. So that's going to be 12 on 20. So clearly this one is larger. So in this case, the answer would be 13 on 20 is the larger fraction. So hopefully at this point you can see that the process is very systematic. It always works. It's a little bit rigorous because we have to go through these steps, but at least it works every single time. So now for this one, let's find the least common multiple of 12 and 18. Decompose those into their prime factors. So 2, 6, 2 and 3. So 2 times 2 times 3. And then 18, and let's see what we have. 3 times 6. And then 2 times 3. Okay, so this one is going to be a little bit tricky because we have one repeating 2 and one repeating 3. So 2 times 2 times 3. Right, because this one of the 2's is repeating, one of the 3's is repeating, so this is pretty much what we're going to have. And then it turns out that the least common multiple of the 2 is going to be 12. Actually, that is incorrect because I forgot, right? So let me just write this one here. I forgot this 3 over here, so this would actually be 3 times 2 times 3. So we have 1 2 is repeated, right? So let me just write this more correctly here. 2 times 2, that already accounts for this 2 here. Then 3, 3, that's already 1 3 accounted for, but we also have this extra 3 here. So that's why this would be 12 times 3, that's 36. This is the least common multiple of those two numbers. My apologies for that mistake. So now what we do is we look at these pairs of numbers and we say, okay, so how much do we need to multiply the first one with to make it 36? Well, we multiply both numerator and denominator by 3. So that's going to become 15 on 36. And then for this one, we just multiply those by 2. So that's going to be 14 on 36. So clearly, this one is larger than that one. So we say that 5 on 12 is the larger fraction. And now we're going to go and do question D. So we have least common multiple of 35 and 14. Let's see what that gives us. So decompose into prime factors. This one is going to be 7 and 5. So 7 times 5. 14 is going to be 2 and 7. So 2 times 7. The 7 is repeated, so we only include it once. And we have 2 times 5 times 7. So this is going to be 10. This is going to be 70. So now we look at our two fractions again. So how much do we need to multiply this by to make it the denominator 70? We multiply by 2, so it's going to become 52 on 70. And then this one, how many times do we need to multiply this by? We'll multiply this by 5, that becomes 70. And then the top is going to be 55. So clearly this one is larger than that one. So in this case, the larger fraction is going to be 11 on 40. Sorry, 11 on 14. So hopefully this video has shown you how to use the least common multiple or the lowest common multiple concept to actually determine which fraction is larger between a pair of two fractions. And then this is going to be quite handy because we're going to start doing some stuff on ratios and best buys and things like that, where you actually need to compare whether one of the deals that you're getting is actually better than another one and decide based on that. So that's what we're going to start doing in the next few videos.